Chapter 2066. With Du Yomei's miserable background, relying on Li Fan was not strange at all. After eating, she planned to go back. Unexpectedly, she met Li Fan halfway and even came over to greet her. Of course, she continued to maintain a cold expression. When Li Fan asked her for her contact information, she still had no intention of giving it to him. Li Fan's expression changed slightly for a moment, but he quickly maintained his smile, as if he had no intention of pestering her. He turned around and went back with his roommates. Tanguo did not say anything, but Ran Jingdan opened her mouth. Really, anyone dares to pursue our families, Tanguo. Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror? That person is indeed not worthy of Tanguo. Miao Han said lightly. Just ignore this kind of person. He won't leave in 2 days. Yes, Tanguo is the daughter of the family Tang. The people chasing her are lining up to the opposite school, Li Xiaoli said, but her words sounded a little sour. Tanguo smiled faintly. For someone who is unmarried, they must keep a distance from the opposite sex. If I really gave him my contact information, how would I explain it to my fiancé? She knew that with Li Fan's hearing, he would definitely be able to hear the situation here. Sure enough, the system told her that Li Fan's expression was startled. The anger in his eyes had not completely faded. In the following time, Li Fan did not come over to create any coincidental encounters like in the original work. Tanguo finally calmed down a lot, but she knew that Li Fan was definitely not a well-behaved person. When she was shopping, she found Li Fan and Du Yumei, who was wearing a beautiful dress, walking together. Du Yumei even had a very beautiful rose in her hand. Seeing that the two of them were interested, she knew that the two of them were almost done. Seeing that Tanguo was not doing anything, the system could not hold it in anymore. Tanguo raised her eyebrows. What am I in a hurry for? Let him dance for a while. Don't tell me you want me to stop him from picking up girls? Du Yumei is willing. I don't want to go. Of course, the system did not mean that. It just wanted to know how its host was going to deal with Li Fan. At present, Li Fan's performance was just a little unfaithful and greasy, but it seemed that there was nothing wrong with it. That's because he hasn't reached the peak yet. Just watch, it won't be long before he makes a name for himself. Let's wait until he's arrogant. Right now, he hasn't done anything. Let's see what he'll do next. If he didn't do anything bad, he wouldn't be able to find a reason. Moreover, she also wanted to see if those women could withstand Li Fan's sweet words. Forget about Du Yumei. With her miserable family situation, Li Fan was her savior. For example, the woman behind her was of high status. She really couldn't understand. Tanguo had been spending most of her time in the dormitory when she was not attending classes. Occasionally, she would receive calls from her fiancé, Zhang Xing. On weekends, she would ask him out for a meal. Once, she even met Li Fan. Li Fan was either with Du Yumei or Wu Shui. It seemed that he had no intention of harassing her. In less than 2 days, Tanguo saw Li Fan holding a book and acting cool at the entrance of the library. Then, a good-looking girl stood beside him and said in surprise, Li Fan, you can actually memorize a dream of the Red Chamber. Tanguo, Li Fan's golden finger was a system store. He could buy all kinds of mystical items from it. Right now, he was able to memorize a dream of the Red Chamber with his eyes closed because his consciousness was immersed in the system space, and he was reading according to the book. To be able to enter this key university from an ordinary grade in a year, he didn't seem to study much. That was because he bought a college entrance exam paper from the system store and memorized the answers directly. He was also afraid of being suspected, so he didn't dare to go against all of them. In the beginning, Li Fan wasn't that high profile. Then Li Fan, can you memorize a journey to the west? The girl's eyes lit up. If you can memorize a journey to the west, I'll let you off today. Tanguo stood silently in the corner, watching Li Fan close his eyes and continue to recite a journey to the west. Peak. Chapter 2067. Tanguo watched as Li Fan started to recite Journey to the West from the beginning. That girl stood at the side, holding the book and staring at it without blinking. Her eyes were shining. Looking at Li Fan, it was as if she had seen a peerless treasure. All right, I believe you. You really have a photographic memory. The girl excitedly closed the book and grabbed Li Fan's arm. Li Fan, since you have a photographic memory, then come with me to participate in the poetry conference. With your situation, As long as you can recite all the poems from ancient times to modern times, you will definitely be able to win the championship. Tanghua was enlightened. She was wondering why this girl would pull Li Fan to recite Dream of the Red Chamber and Journey to the West. So it was like this. In the plot, there was indeed a plot where Li Fan participated in the poetry conference. Otherwise, with Li Fan's current status, how could he come into contact with the superstar Gan Yingying? The special guest of the poetry conference was Gan Yingying. At that time, Li Fan had displayed his extraordinary ability and defeated all the scholars and professors from various big schools to win the championship. His extraordinary memory was worshipped by countless people. Other than participating in the poetry conference, he also participated in the idiom competition and history competition. In short, these kinds of competitions that relied on memory had Li Fan's figure. Wherever Li Fan appeared, he was invincible and no one could stop him. No matter how powerful you were, you could only be his stepping stone, a small cannon fodder to polish his rising life. The girl who pulled Li Fan was a sophomore from the Chinese department. She was in the same batch as her and was very beautiful. She was also one of the campus beauties. Her name was Su Shirling. She also had an identity that no one else knew. She was the daughter of the principal of this university. When Tanghua came back to her senses, how could Li Fan resist the pleading of such a beautiful girl? He agreed to participate in the poetry conference. Tanghua wasn't interested in seeing Li Fan flirt with girls. As long as the other party didn't force girls to follow him, it had nothing to do with her. How many women did he have? If he didn't capsize, that would be his ability. In less than 2 days, Tanghua heard her roommates discussing that this season's poetry conference would be held in their school. Tanghua was not interested in competing with Li Fan. Ran Jingdan and Li Xiaoli were both science students and were not interested in poetry. However, Miao Han, who looked quiet and had a gentle personality, was interested. She expressed that she wanted to give it a try. Miao Han would also write some poems. She was a standard artistic young woman. Since she was going to participate, as her roommate, Tanghua would definitely go and support her. After all, the original owner had a good relationship with her at this time. The registration time for the audition was set for Saturday. The 4 of them woke up early in the morning. Miao Han looked a little nervous. She only calmed down after a few words of encouragement. When they arrived at the scene, there were indeed many people present. Some of the families who lived nearby didn't go back either. It seemed like they wanted to watch the show or participate in the audition. If they were lucky, they might even be able to go on TV and meet the big stars in the finals. They didn't want to go on TV and gain some glory for themselves. Miao Han came early. With her cultural background and the deliberate preparation she had done yesterday, she passed the audition test and successfully registered. Li Fan and his group arrived late, and the judges had almost packed up their stalls. Originally, she wasn't very satisfied with Li Fan. Later, Su Shirling quickly said that Li Fan had a photographic memory. If she didn't believe it, she could test him. Vertex. Chapter 2068. Under Li Fan's outstanding performance, Tanghua realized that the judges were so excited that they almost caught Li Fan and sent him to the finals. Retentive memory, just this ability alone was a gimmick. Li Fan also noticed Tanghua. With a smile on his lips, he walked in front of Tanghua. "Senior Tang, are you also going to participate in the poetry competition?" "I'm not participating. My roommate is participating." Tanghua replied coldly, making Li Fan a little disappointed. Especially Tanghua's attitude towards him, it was really too cold. Ever since he came here, who didn't flatter him? As long as a woman knew of his ability, they would look at him with eyes full of worship. Li Fan thought that Tanghua looked down on him because she hadn't seen his ability. As for Tanghua's fiancé, he didn't care at all. He had seen the other party before and had inadvertently seen the way the 2 of them interacted. The 2 of them weren't close, and that person's appearance was indeed not bad, but he reeked of money. His engagement with Tanghua was most likely a family marriage. During this period of time, he had already investigated Tanghua and Zhang Xing's background. That's really a pity. If Senior Tang were to participate, we could still form a team. Li Fan was a little unwilling to accept Tanghua's attitude. They had known each other for so long, but he didn't even get a phone number. "Li Fan, let's go eat. I'll treat you. This time, you have to do well for our team." Su Shirling didn't know if she felt it, but Li Fan was very special to Tanghua. In addition, there were two very beautiful girls beside Tanghua. She planned to pull Li Fan away. Li Fan's talent was discovered by her. She didn't allow others to see it. However, Ran Jingdian looked at the two of them being intimate and couldn't help but say, "Did you change girlfriends again?" At this time, Ran Jingdian still didn't seem to like Li Fan, which was why she said such poisonous words. She just couldn't get used to Li Fan acting like he was the most handsome man in the world and all the beautiful women would bow down to him. Seeing Su Shirling's appearance, how could she not understand that this was another little girl who was captivated by Li Fan? She couldn't help but expose her. Sure enough, Li Fan and Su Shirling's expressions changed. Su Shirling also immediately let go of Li Fan's arm. Her face was a little red, and she looked at Ran Jingdian angrily. As such, both sides had nothing more to say and left in different directions. From afar, Tanghua heard Su Shirling asking Li Fan in a low voice if he had a girlfriend. According to Ran Jingdian and Miao Han's thoughts, Li Fan should have thought of a way to cover it up. However, Li Fan actually said very frankly, "It's mine. I have a girlfriend." Tanghua couldn't help but turn around and look at Su Shirling's disappointed face. In the end, she didn't say anything. Li Fan changed the topic and soon made her happy again. Although that Li Fan is a bit of a playboy, he still has some ability. After returning to the dormitory, Miao Han couldn't help but say, "I underestimated him before. He actually has the ability to remember everything." When speaking of this, Miao Han didn't seem to hate Li Fan as much as before. Tanghua also finally understood how Miao Han became Li Fan's woman in the end. For a literary young girl, a man who could shine in the poetry competition was undoubtedly very attractive. So what? Isn't he still a playboy? I think Su Shirling has taken a fancy to him, Ran Jingdian said disdainfully. Peak. Chapter 2069. The dormitory discussed Su Shirling for a long time, but Tanghua did not participate in it. She felt that Miao Han did not hate Li Fan as much as before. She even said that she wanted to compete with him to see if his photographic memory was real or fake. What if the judges drew a page of poetry that Li Fan knew was just a coincidence? Tanghua rubbed her chin. After Li Fan became the champion of the poetry competition, he would start to meet all kinds of big shots and reveal all kinds of outstanding women. Then, his true legendary life would begin. He would also become more and more arrogant, thinking that there was no woman that he could not get. Even if he would not do anything to that woman directly, he would still attack her from the side, making that woman have no choice but to submit. All right, then let him be at the poetry competition and let the other party become famous first. Only after experiencing the peak would one know how painful it would be to fall to the bottom. And those women who were willing to follow him, when he was down and out, how many of them would continue to follow him wholeheartedly? She would not do anything. She would just wait for Li Fan to provoke her and snatch away his cheat. At that time, Li Fan would already have some achievements. If he was smart, even if he did not have a cheat, it should not be a problem for him to gain a foothold in this world. After the system heard this, it clicked its tongue. Tanghua thought for a moment. It was like this. That system store had everything. Its advantages were similar to Taba's, but the items inside were more abundant than Taba's. There were all kinds of strange things. In the plot, the reason why he and his women were able to maintain their youthful looks was because they had taken the eternal youth pills that were bought inside. Then let's wait for him to become famous and see what he will do. When the system heard this, it was happy. The host clearly knew that for an ordinary person like this who had received a treasure from the sky, without hard work, everything was just bubbles. At the beginning, they might be able to keep their mind clear. Later on, most of them would slowly lose themselves in wealth and women, losing themselves. Li Fan thought that he had the system store and could buy anything. He thought that he was invincible. Of course, he would get whatever he wanted. He would not walk on the right path and would only go astray. Moreover, this was a stallion novel. It was written by a crooked person, and the direction was all arranged by the author behind the scenes. It was all about stallion invincible, refreshing, and accepting female types. It was definitely impossible to let Li Fan be a serious, civilized, and devoted protagonist. Tanghua was not in a hurry at all. Generally speaking, there was no danger in this world, and there was nothing worth doing in a hurry. However, in order to prevent Tangkor from running out of funds like in the script, she had already invested all of her pocket money into the stock market. By the time they needed it, it should have multiplied by many times. As for whether or not they would help Tangkor overcome this crisis, that would depend on their attitude. Everyone had their own choice, didn't they? At this moment, a message popped up in the group. Tangwa saw that it was a message from Yahweh. Vertex. Chapter 2070. Yahweh, thank you for your help. I've completely recovered. I really didn't expect that in just 2 months, I would be able to recover to a better state than before. Everyone could see that Yahweh was very emotional. If anyone could see her, they would see that she was about to cry. The past few months had been like going from heaven to hell and back again. It was amazing. Tangwa, what are you going to do next? Recovering from his injuries in just 2 months would easily arouse suspicion. Yahweh, I'm now in a private dermatology hospital abroad. After receiving the beauty pill from Ziyun, I asked about the treatment. If the news of me returning to the entertainment industry after recovering in 2 months is spread, it will definitely cause a huge uproar. It will also remind the mastermind that they can harm me again. At that time, we were filming in the forest. It was summer, and the mastermind was too clean. The police haven't found anything yet. They don't even have a suspect. The forest is not like the city. There are no surveillance cameras at all. Tangwa, you're right. If you go out like this, your abnormality will not only arouse suspicion, but you will also be targeted by the mastermind. If such a magical secret is discovered, you will definitely be caught and dissected by the unscrupulous laboratory. Yahweh, so, after receiving the beauty pill from Ziyun and your gift, I booked a plane ticket to go abroad on the same day. I've contacted a private dermatology hospital and paid them a lot of money to treat me. I'm secretly taking the beauty pill. Even if I recover now, the outside world won't suspect anything. I thought about it and decided to stay here for half a year. I haven't had a rest in a long time. I can rest for a while and recharge my energy before going back. After this incident, Yahweh was not afraid that the entertainment industry would abandon her. As long as her face recovered, it would cause a sensation. She didn't have any scandals, because if she recovered, she would definitely be offered a lot of endorsements. Tangwa was relieved to hear Yahweh's plan. She didn't reveal that she and Yahweh were in the same world. When she exited the group and checked Weibo, she found that Yahweh was on the hot search list. Yahweh secretly went abroad for treatment. After Yahweh's fans found out about it, they all left messages on her Weibo page, wishing her a speedy return. Tangwa then realized that Yahweh had posted on Weibo, telling everyone that she was receiving treatment abroad and asking her fans to wait for her return. That Weibo post sent her fans into a frenzy that very day and sent her to the top of the search rankings. Then, she saw another trending topic, which was currently ranked second. #GonIngYing joins the poetry contest. #Tang rested her chin on her hand and smiled. She didn't think much about it. However, she was looking forward to the meeting between GonIngYing and Li Fan. Miao Han, you must work hard to enter the finals. Miao Han was flattered by Tangwa's sudden encouragement. She quickly replied that she would do her best. Every division would compete for 3 spots to participate in the finals. With so many people signing up today, Miao Han would have to put in a lot of effort if she wanted to enter the top 3. This was also what piqued Miao Han's interest. From that day onwards, she had been battling with CIC every day. How would she know that the reason why Tangwa encouraged her was because she wanted to be part of her family and friends and go to the finals to watch Li Fan and GonIngYing? System, very bad. Chapter 2071. The system suddenly remembered. Where's this world's host's big cutie? He shouldn't be absent, right? When Tangwa heard the system's words, her tone was very calm. Otherwise, his previous life's wish would have been in vain. System. I feel a little sad for that guy. What's going on? In the following period of time, many things happened. Under the witness of the system and Tangwa, Duyume willingly became his woman. After Li Fan opened his company, he let Duyume quit her job at the skewer shop and let her be his company's secretary. During this period of time, Li Fan relied on the system store to pick up a few down-and-out talents. Not only did he provide funds, but he also offered generous conditions and successfully opened his company, becoming a big boss. He bought a business plan from the system store and threw it to these people. He was just a shopkeeper who didn't do anything. In any case, he wasn't lacking in money. What he lacked was social status. For the time being, he couldn't enter the upper circle. Du Yume became Li Fan's woman. This matter definitely couldn't be hidden from his first love, Wu Shui. After all, Wu Shui was a student from the music academy next door. After Wu Shui found out, she was angry for a few days. Du Yume also went to apologize to her, and Li Fan went to coax her every day. In any case, after all kinds of entanglement, the two of them also found that Li Fan was surrounded by many women. They immediately understood that such an outstanding man like Li Fan couldn't be owned by only one of them. Wu Shui accepted Du Yume, and the two of them called each other sisters. Li Fan even said sweet nothings to Wu Shui, saying that she would always be his first wife and that he would marry her in the future. Wu Shui was actually very happy. Sometimes, she and Du Yume would even live in the same room as Li Fan. According to what Tanghua knew, the women who had an ambiguous relationship with Li Fan, other than the two that he had already taken in, were the principal's daughter, Su Shirling, and his tutor, Shi Yun Nuo. Although Shi Yun Nuo was very angry with Li Fan every time, she didn't reject Li Fan's approach. What made Tanghua the most inconceivable was that Shi Yun Nuo had a boyfriend. Then, because of a student's teasing, she didn't report him for harassment. Instead, she blushed and felt ashamed. She didn't understand. The system also didn't understand. It was too greasy. While Li Fan was flirting with girls, the poetry competition at the division had also begun. As Miao Han's roommate, Tanghua would definitely be there to support her. Miao Han had always been interested in these things. Coupled with her cramming, she performed very well in the division competition and finally got third place. The second place was from the school next door. Su Shirling was fourth, and Li Fan was first. After the competition ended, Tanghua realized that something was wrong with Miao Han. He would often mention Li Fan, saying how powerful he was. Ran Jingdan even vomited at Tanghua and belittled Li Fan a few times. In the end, she quarreled with Miao Han. What's so good about that lecherous guy? Didn't you see two women holding his arm while he was shopping? Who doesn't know that they're in that kind of relationship? Miao Han. No matter what, Li Fan is indeed a very talented person. I can tell that he didn't memorize it by rote. He analyzed every single poem thoroughly. This time in the division competition, it was expected that he would be able to become the champion. Moreover, I have a premonition that he will be able to become the overall champion. I also heard that he wasn't just having an ambiguous relationship with two girls. Tanghua interrupted. You wouldn't have taken a fancy to him, right? Peak. Chapter 2072. How is that possible? Miao Han's voice became softer. All right, I'm going to continue reading. Let's not talk about this. System, Tanghua replied plainly, yeah. Ran Jingdan was still angry with Miao Han and felt extremely uncomfortable. She pulled Tanghua to the library. Because of the craze of the poetry competition, there were more people reading. When they arrived, there was only one table left, but there was already someone sitting there. The other seats were not occupied. So Ran Jingdan chose a book and sat in front of him. The moment she sat down, Ran Jingdan felt that something was wrong. The male classmate who was sitting opposite her subconsciously moved the book in front of him, and he also moved towards the window without a trace. When Tanghua walked over, she saw that there were a few books beside Ran Jingdan. She had no choice but to sit beside the male classmate. Once she sat down, it was serious. She felt that the male classmate beside her coughed softly. She subconsciously looked over and saw that there was a red rash on his face. Was he sick? She tried asking, Classmate, are you feeling unwell? Do you want to go to the infirmary? Taking a closer look, this male classmate was quite good-looking. It was just that his skin was unhealthily fair, and there were more and more red rashes on his neck and cheeks. In such a situation, Tanghua couldn't ignore it. I'll send you to the infirmary. The male classmate's cold gaze landed on Tanghua. His voice was a little cold. No need, just stay away from me. Stay away from him? If not for the fact that he did not look well, Ran Jingdan would have jumped up. Stay away from him? These words of obvious disdain were really infuriating. When Tangwa heard this, she retracted her hand that was about to touch him and moved a little further away. Is this okay? A little further, the male classmate said coldly. Tangwa moved a little further away. How about this? Not enough. Tangwa realized that she had moved a little and saw that Ranjingdan was sitting opposite him. She said softly, Ranjingdan, sit opposite me. Although Ranjingdan was unhappy, she seemed to have understood something. She hugged her book and sat opposite Tangwa. Then, Tangwa realized that the rashes on the male classmate's face had disappeared. His pale face also gradually regained its redness. She and Ranjingdan looked at each other, fully feeling the unfriendliness of this world. System, maybe it's a kind of illness, phobia. Tangwa guessed because she had encountered this illness in the world she had traveled to. Usually, this kind of illness was rooted in the heart. The system's considerate reminder. It was not easy to cure for this kind of mental illness. Seeing the host and her roommate move to the edge reading the book. There are no other seats in the library, so let's just sit here. It's so far away, so it shouldn't affect him. The system, was this not right? Chapter 2073. Tangwa observed the guy for a while. When she saw that the rash on his face and neck had subsided, she then focused on reading. Fu Yinji saw the way she was sizing him up, and his lips pursed into a straight line. His expression was very cold, or rather, his entire being was very cold. When he saw that Tangwa was no longer sizing him up and had no intention of getting close to him, he also looked at the book. Ranjingdan did not pay much attention to this. She had quarreled with Miao Han earlier and was unhappy. She wanted to read some books to distract herself. As for that sick guy, she did not want to know what he was doing at all when she thought of his disdainful gaze. Tangwa did not pay attention to what Fu Yinji was doing. However, when Fu Yinji was in the middle, he could not help but look at the girl sitting far away from him. Fu Yinji lowered his head, feeling very puzzled. If he could, he did not want to treat his mental illness. He had tried all kinds of methods over the years, but there was no cure. Whenever the opposite sex got too close to him, his face would turn pale and a scary rash would appear on his neck and face. This was something he could not control. These special reactions seemed to be warning others that he was a person who did not want strangers to get close to him. Of course, he did not think that there was anything wrong with this. At least it could prevent the opposite sex from getting close to him. The bad thing was that once the opposite sex deliberately got close to him, it would cause his body pain. Today, he came to the library because he wanted some peace and quiet. He did not ask anyone to follow him. The people who came to the library often knew him and his situation. Basically, they would not choose to sit beside him. These two girls did not come to the library often, so it was not strange that they sat directly on the seats. However, his attention was attracted by a girl. It was a little unbelievable. It's no use sneaking glances. He can't get close to me. Tangwa's voice was a little gloating. The system was speechless. There is still a way. As long as we find the cause and overcome the psychological fear, it will be fine. However, I am not familiar with him. I can't just rush over and say, hey, you are sick. I can treat you. Will you listen to me now? The system thought about it and agreed. This young man was not simple at all. He exuded the aura of a rich young master. It was clear that the other party's identity was extraordinary. It was impossible for him to do anything rashly. Take it slow. There will always be a chance. Moreover, I think he is a very restrained person. Just now, when Ranjingdan and I were so close, he didn't directly scold or get angry. It can be seen that his temper is not bad. Logically speaking, such a person shouldn't have such a strange mental illness. Tangwa didn't know the truth, and she didn't intend to get close to him. The fact that they were able to meet each other meant that there was some fate between them. In that case, it would only be natural for them to meet a few more times. There was bound to be a chance for their relationship to progress further. Moreover, she had a fiancé now. For the sake of the reputation of both families, she couldn't do something that would embarrass them. Therefore, it was better to settle the matter between the families. When she was free, it would be easy for her to do whatever she wanted. As for this guy, he shouldn't be in any danger. X767E and X9540 and X4E00, and X4E0B, and X201C. Quick crossover, female supporting character, calm down and X722A, and X4E66, and X5C4B, and X201D, and X6700, and X65B0, and X7AE0, and X8282, and X7B2C, and X4E00, and X65F6, and X95F4, and X514D, and X8D39, and X9605, and X8BFB, and X3002, and X3002, Vertex. Chapter 2074. For a few days, Tangwa went to the library, but she was always late. As expected, she met Fu Yinji, who was occupying the table. She didn't greet him and just chose a seat at the side. Fu Yinji only raised his head to look at her and didn't have any strange reaction. Then, he lowered his head and continued. Tangwa didn't plan to get close to Fu Yinji. She mainly came to get familiar with him. System. Actually, he didn't believe it, but he couldn't guess what the host was thinking. After about 2 weeks, the finals of the poetry competition started. Tangwa naturally couldn't go to the library. Everyone in the dormitory went to the finals as Miao Han's relatives and friends. This time, it was broadcasted on TV. Tangwa and the other two were fine, but Miao Han, who was going to stand on the stage to compete, was extremely nervous. During her trip to the finals, Tangwa discovered something very interesting. It was Li Fan's group of relatives and friends. Other than his roommates and some friends of the same sex, there were also very beautiful girls. 2 of them were his women, Wu Shui and Du Yumei. There was also the counselor, Shi Yunhua, and the principal's daughter, Su Shirling. The remaining few beautiful girls were unfamiliar faces. Tangwa didn't recognize them, but looking at them working hard to cheer for Li Fan and looking at the scene of Li Fan and his 2 girlfriends showing off their love with envy, she understood. Li Fan's charm was so great. Was it worth it for them to be so dead set on him? Tangwa also found something. Du Yumei was much more beautiful than before. Her skin was fairer and very smooth. Almost no pores could be seen. She was like a porcelain doll. At this moment, she finally understood. Li Fan must have given Du Yumei something like the beauty pill. Looking at Wu Shui again, it was the same. Her skin was so perfect that it didn't look like a real person. The other girls were also goddesses, but they couldn't be compared to the 2 of them. Li Fan seemed to feel Tang was sizing him up. He smiled. Senior Tang, why do you keep looking at me? Is there a flower on my face? Without waiting for Tangwa to say anything, the other girls actually started to tease him. They asked if Tangwa had taken a fancy to Li Fan. They even said that Li Fan, you already have such beautiful women like Wu Shui and Du Yumei. Why do you still want to provoke Tangwa? Tangwa was surprised to find that the people in the carriage did not seem to be surprised by all this. They were not surprised that Li Fan had 2 girlfriends at the same time. It was as if Li Fan should have 2 girlfriends. However, she noticed something different. Ran Jingdan, who was sitting beside her, didn't look good. Seeing that the others were teasing Tangwa and Li Fan, she mocked, Tangwa already has a fiancé. You guys should stop joking. Towards Li Fan, she was becoming more and more disgusted. Why would such a greasy man be liked by so many women? Was the heavens blind? Ran Jingdan seems to hate Li Fan. With such an attitude, how did she become Li Fan's woman? Tangwa communicated with the system. She was so bad-tempered and arrogant. She really didn't look like someone who would give in to a man. The system couldn't answer. After all, the details of Li Fan accepting a woman weren't written in detail. Usually, this kind of emotional drama was very awkward. The woman that the male lead met, even if he didn't take her into his harem, would have to be alone for the rest of his life. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to recognize Mount Tai and would have a bad life. X767E and X9540 and X4E00 and X4E0B and X201C. Quick crossover, female supporting character, calm down and X722A and X4E66 and X5C4B and X201D and X6700 and X65B0 and X7AE0 and X8282 and X7B2C and X4E00, and X65F6, and X95F4, and X514D, and X8D39, and X9605, and X8BFB, and X3002, and X3002, peak. No one doubted that he had won the championship, and the result was the same. As for Miao Han, she was eliminated midway. Since Miao Han had been eliminated, Tangwa's roommates naturally wouldn't follow her to the finals. However, she had always been paying attention to Li Fan's news. She would go to the library whenever she had no classes, and the place would always be packed with people. Fu Yinji was still there. To be honest, Fu Yinji was not used to Tangwa's absence for the past few days. After all, no one in the entire library would sit beside him except for Tangwa. This kind of feeling was a little strange. So when Tangwa returned, he raised his head and asked unexpectedly, "Why haven't you come to the library recently?" System. Are you so unreserved? X767E, and X9540, and X4E00, and X4E0B, and X201C. Quick crossover, female supporting character, calm down in X722A, and X4E66, and X5C4B, and X201D, and X6700, and X65B0, and X7AE0, and X8282, and X7B2C, and X4E00, and X65F6, and X95F4, and X514D, and X8D39, and X9605, and X8BFB, and X3002, and X3002, peak. Chapter 2076. When Tangwa heard Fu Yinji's words, she almost laughed out loud. He really wasn't reserved at all. Fu Yinji seemed to have realized that his question was a little abrupt. After all, they were only sitting at the same table and she was far away. She didn't know their names and didn't introduce them to each other. They weren't friends or classmates. At most, they were schoolmates. Tangwa subconsciously looked at Fu Yinji's ears. Indeed, they were a little red. She resisted the urge to laugh out loud and said, "I accompanied my roommate to participate in the poetry conference." And Fu Yinji replied faintly and didn't say anything else. He was really cold and noble. The system felt that soon, this guy would abandon some principles and reserve and shamelessly want to stay by the host's side. Due to Fu Yinji's problem, Tangwa didn't purposely get too close to him to avoid causing trouble for him. As for how to treat his mental illness, she wasn't anxious at all. Anyway, the two of them were familiar with each other. There would always be a chance in the future. After a while, Fu Yinji spoke. "You didn't participate in the poetry conference?" Fu Yinji was holding his phone. The system then told Tangwa that Fu Yinji was actually searching for the program of the poetry conference. It seemed like he was planning to look for Tangwa on it. When Tangwa heard this, she didn't know what to say. "I'm not interested in that." Moreover, there was someone who had a photographic memory. Photographic memory? Fu Yinji swiped his phone for a while and quickly understood who the person with a photographic memory was. When he looked at those photos, his gaze was especially subtle. Li Fan was surrounded by beautiful women, and a few of them looked very intimate with him. He wasn't jealous of Li Fan. Instead, he felt that being surrounded by so many women, wouldn't Li Fan feel uncomfortable? Actually, he didn't know why he had such a huge reaction to the opposite sex. Every time a member of the opposite sex came into contact with him, it would cause him to feel cold all over. His face would turn pale, and he would even have some scary red rashes. His family didn't tell him, but through his own secret investigation, he realized that there was a blank memory of his childhood. He suspected that the answer should be in this blank memory. Of course, he wasn't that anxious to find the answer. His intuition told him that it was not a good thing. He did not have much interest in interacting with the opposite sex. After this short chat, Tangwa and Fu Yinji finally got to know each other. One day, the system told Tangwa about this matter. After asking, she found out that Gan Yingying had encountered something and had no choice but to call Li Fan. Naturally, Li Fan, the male lead, couldn't wait to be the hero and save the beauty. Then he would send the superstar, Gan Yingying, home. What else could happen between a single man and a single woman? Smoothly, Gan Yingying became Li Fan's woman. As for Li Fan's company, because he had picked up a few very good business talents, in addition to the business plan that he had taken out and some very advanced technological products, the company was getting bigger and bigger, and it had attracted the attention of many people. During this period, Tangwa witnessed Li Fan being looked down upon by many people, and then he slapped their faces back one by one. There were also many people who coveted his company's products, but in the end, they went for wool and came home shorn. Other than Gan Yingying, the number of women by Li Fan's side had been increasing. X767E, and X9540, and X4E00, and X4E0B, and X201C. Quick crossover, female supporting character, calm down in X722A, and X4E66, and X5C4B, and X201D, and X6700, and X65B0, and X7AE0, and X8282, and X7B2C, and X4E00, and X65F6, and X95F4, and X514D, and X8D39, and X9605, and X8BFB, and X3002, and X3002, peak. Chapter 2077. But for the main female characters, such as Su Shirling, the progress was relatively slow. Actually, that was right. After all, this kind of female character with more ink would definitely not be easily obtained. Li Fan and the other women did not know about Gan Yingying's existence for the time being. However, not knowing for the time being did not mean that they would not know in the future. One time when they were eating outside, Tangwa met Li Fan again and heard them discussing the big star Gan Yingying. Not only was Gan Yingying's acting skills not bad, her singing was also good. In fact, she had debuted as a singer. This time, what was being discussed was that Gan Yingying was planning to hold a concert, and Li Fan's girlfriend, Wu Shui, was a fan of Gan Yingying. She was discussing with Du Yumei and especially wanted to see Gan Yingying's concert. Li Fan promised her that he would help her get the tickets when the time came, which naturally made Wu Shui very happy. Tangwa watched the development of this plot and felt very helpless. Although Li Fan was getting more and more arrogant, he had not done anything out of line until now. Most of the time, it was because someone provoked him that he retorted back. But she felt that Li Fan would get arrogant sooner or later. Li Fan did bring Wu Shui and Du Yumei to see Gan Yingying's concert later on. The two of them also knew about his relationship with Gan Yingying. Although they were a little sad at first, they had long accepted this result and got along well in the end. Gan Yingying would often secretly come to the house that Li Fan bought outside the school. In any case, outsiders did not know what the three women and a man would do inside. Su Shirling also knew where they lived. One time, she happened to bump into Gan Yingying kissing Li Fan at the door. Then, she got angry and quarreled with Li Fan, saying that he was so fickle. How could he be worthy of Du Yumei and Wu Shui? She angrily scolded him for being a playboy. Then, Wu Shui and Du Yumei both expressed that Li Fan was very outstanding. They already knew about it and did not mind Gan Yingying's appearance at all. They all knew that Su Shirling liked Li Fan and even advised her that if she liked Li Fan, she could also stay by his side. They did not mind. Such an outstanding Li Fan was worthy of the love of many women. When Tangwa heard the system's narration, she looked at the food in front of her and did not want to eat anymore. What happened after that? Tangwa replied indifferently, "Oh, so it's like that? Is there a follow-up? Remember to let me know if there's anything else." Tangwa didn't have to wait for long. Su Shirling's father, who was the principal of this school, was actually the CEO of a company. Knowing that his daughter was unhappy, he used the power in his hands to pressure Li Fan, but in the end, he was beaten back by Li Fan one by one. In the end, he had no choice but to talk to Li Fan face to face. He expressed that if Li Fan was willing to only be with his daughter, he would not care about what happened before. But Li Fan was the main character. How could he be threatened by others? On the spot, he said that if the other party dared to touch his woman and the people around him, he would teach him a lesson. This made the other party very angry. The two of them competed with each other for a long time. Gradually, Su Shirling's father began to admire Li Fan. Especially after knowing that he was the CEO behind that technology company, his attitude changed greatly. X767E, and X9540, and X4E00, and X4E0B, and X201C. Quick crossover, female supporting character, calm down in X722A, and X4E66, and X5C4B, and X201D, and X6700, and X65B0, and X7AE0, and X8282, and X7B2C, and X4E00, and X65F6, and X95F4, and X514D, and X8D39, and X9605, and X8BFB, and X3002, and X3002, peak. Chapter 2079. With such a large sum of money, aren't you afraid that I'll leave and not return to China in the future? Yin Huan really didn't understand why Tangguo would choose him and give him a card without saying a word. There was a large sum of money in it, enough for him to make a comeback. I dare to give it to you, but I'm not afraid that you'll run away. The fact that I can give you so much so easily means that this money is just a string of numbers to me. Yin Huan sized up the girl sitting beside him. She was very young and, of course, very beautiful. He didn't think too much, because when the other party placed this card in front of him so easily, it made him unable to think of anything. He felt a kind of courage from this young girl. His intuition told him that he should agree to her conditions and take this card abroad to make a comeback. He himself had not fallen to the point of being poor, but he had no way to come up with the funds to stand up again. This card was the card for the country she asked him to go to. He didn't know how she transferred out such a large sum of money. System, are you stupid? Do you need to transfer it out? Just buy their shares on the internet in that country. Of course, most people wouldn't believe it. Okay, I agree to your conditions. Yin Huan reached out and picked up the thin card and put it in his pocket. He smiled. Miss Tang trusts me so much that you didn't hesitate to invest a huge sum of money. Then I won't let you down. But I'm curious, why are you helping me? If it wasn't for the fact that he was really unwilling and holding back his breath, Yin Huan wouldn't have agreed to such a thing so easily. It should be said that if it wasn't for the fact that he was desperate, he wouldn't believe that a pie would fall from the sky and fall on his head. I see that you have a good physique. You must be a little expert at making money, so I chose you. Tangguo picked up the wine glass and took a sip of wine. She turned around and left, but what she said stunned Yin Huan. He stared at her back in a daze and didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Looking at his physique, he was a little expert at making money. Yin Huan laughed and gulped down the wine in his glass. He took his coat and walked out of the bar. Well, then he would be a little expert at making money in the future. This was the first time he was valued so highly by someone. He couldn't let his boss down, right? Li Fan mainly wanted to restrict Yin Huan from rising again in the country. As for the other party going abroad to do things, Li Fan didn't think too much about it. He also didn't think that under his suppression, there was anyone who could make Yin Huan stand up again. He was very busy now. He was busy dealing with his women and pursuing new women. His company had always been managed by the group of capable people under him. If there were any problems, he would buy a perfect solution from the system store. As for the funds, he had so many people under him, so he didn't think that there would be any problems. Otherwise, the business plans and proposals that he had taken out would have been for nothing. Li Fan's company was becoming more and more famous, especially in the field of high-tech products. Many people already knew about it. Although the people in the outside world did not know about Li Fan, his company and his company's products were already used by many people. As for the people of high society, they were also very afraid of the company under Li Fan's name. No matter what happened, the people who attended the banquet were all managers of the company. Li Fan basically didn't show his face. Therefore, many people were guessing who the person behind the new company was. Li Fan's days were very comfortable, and there were more and more women. But this didn't stop him from getting to know new women. One day, Tangguo was in the dormitory and found Miao Han running into the dormitory with a flushed face. Peek. If Li Fan had really used a special method, he would have done something to her long ago. Recalling that this was a world, Tanghua was no longer surprised. This was her worldview. Ranjingdan was so angry that she didn't want to talk to Miao Han anymore. Her relationship with Miao Han had always been good. She went back to the dormitory and tried to persuade Miao Han again. In the end, she decided to ignore her. A few days later, they saw Miao Han packing up some daily necessities. After asking, they found out that she was planning to move out. Li Fan bought a villa outside, and the people living there are all his women. The system secretly reported to Tanghua. Other than the few that the host knows, there are also a few unfamiliar faces. I don't know where he got them from. Tanghua. Then he's really awesome. Peak. Chapter 2081. Recently, Tanghua was a little busy because Li Fan had already started to slap all kinds of passers because of some small matters. If he didn't make them bankrupt, he would shut them out. Naturally, she became busy. She was busy picking up these people and giving them a sum of money to let them go out and make a comeback. When the time came, she would let them come back. During this period, she picked up a couple who were on the 18th floor and were planning to jump off the building. It was also because of a small matter that Li Fan made the company in their hands go bankrupt. In order to pay back the money, they sold all the properties under their names and even lost their house. The results of more than 20 years of hard work were gone just like that. For a moment, they couldn't figure it out, so they held hands and went to the roof, planning to die. Then, they were picked up by Tanghua. Seeing that they were quite capable, she gave them a huge sum of money and let them start afresh. She wasn't afraid that these people wouldn't be able to get back up, to be able to climb to this day, who didn't have some ability and methods. She also picked up a person whose company was bankrupted, whose property was bought over, who was betrayed by his trusted aide and girlfriend, and who was almost angered to death. When she went to see that person, he was lying in the hospital, staring blankly at the ceiling, looking like he had nothing left to live for. In despair, seeing the light, anyone would desperately grab onto this life-saving straw. She was a picky person who thought that she had the ability to get back up. Her character was not bad, but she inadvertently offended Li Fan in a small matter. Or perhaps it was because of Li Fan's woman that she was implicated. It wasn't a big deal. In order to act cool in front of his woman, Li Fan wanted to make her have no way out. By the time Tanghua was almost done with her work, some time had already passed. When she went to the library again, Fu Yinji was still sitting at the same place. The craze of the poetry conference had passed, and there weren't many people in the library in the middle of winter. Tanghua still chose to sit at Fu Yinji's seat, which was still quite far away. Fu Yinji seemed to be used to it, and didn't ask her why she didn't choose another seat. When she sat down, he even raised his head and looked at her. This glance lasted for a long time. "Where have you been recently?" That tone carried a hint of grievance. Tanghua thought that she had heard wrongly. Fu Yinji's face was cold. How could he feel wronged because she hadn't come recently? "I'm busy with something." "What are you busy with?" Fu Yinji asked. He almost asked her why she was busy meeting those bankrupt and unemployed people. He had long found out Li Fan's identity. As for the people who were made bankrupt by Li Fan, he also knew about them. Naturally, he would know that she had gone to meet those people. He wouldn't admit that he was secretly investigating her. He only asked someone to investigate those people who were made bankrupt by Li Fan. The reason why he didn't ask directly was because he had a vague feeling that something was wrong. It wouldn't be good if she misunderstood that he was investigating her. How was it not good? In any case, it was not good. Recently, a few friends have encountered some difficulties, so I helped them. Fu Yinji's expression changed. They didn't even know each other. How could they be friends? Did he give them so much money just to help them? He had received news that those people had taken a huge sum of money to set up companies in different countries abroad and were doing very well. He suspected that she was doing charity. Is that so? Fu Yinji said indifferently. Perhaps he felt that his gaze was too direct, so he shifted his gaze back to the book. Tanghua was a little baffled, but she didn't care. She also planned to read for a while. A few minutes later, Fu Yinji pushed a notebook in front of her. On the page he opened, there was a sentence. Li Fan is not simple. This person is very strange. Peak. Chapter 2082. When she saw this sentence, Tangwa pursed her lips and smiled. System. Host. Your big cutie is quite powerful. Do you want me to check his information? No need. I'll ask him personally in the future. System. We're not even familiar with each other yet, and you're already showing off your love to him? Tangwa also wrote a sentence in her notebook. How do you know? What's strange about him? After Fu Yinji saw it, he replied, I've checked. He's strange everywhere. I believe there are already many people who are suspicious of him, but no one is sure. I don't know what kind of powerful trump cards he has. When Fu Yinji pushed the notebook over, he was actually a little annoyed. Why did he share such a secret with her? How strange. Ever since he knew that the technology company belonged to Li Fan, as well as those wonderful business plans and some technological products that exceeded this era, although they were only for civilian use, he paid attention to them. Li Fan's actions were high profile, and whenever he met someone who was not on the right side, the outcome would not be good. Later on, he found out about the other party's experiences since he was young and was even more certain that he could not go head-to-head with Li Fan at this time. This person was very strange. Without figuring out what trump cards the other party had, he chose to let his subordinates know their place. It was also because the main assets of the Fu family were not in the country. The plan to shift the focus to the country was also put on hold because of Li Fan's appearance. Because of this uncertain factor, he did not dare to gamble with the entire family's assets. Especially after his observation during this period of time, he felt more and more that Li Fan was strange. There were many times when the opponent clearly had a stronger foundation than Li Fan and was stronger than Li Fan in all aspects. In the end, they inexplicably lost, and it was very miserable. Originally, an ordinary high school student who would only be bullied by others, suddenly changed. After the change, he went to buy a lottery ticket and won the prize. After the change, his results, which were originally ordinary, became the first place in every exam. It was the same for the college entrance exam. The result of the investigation was that in the last year, Li Fan did not study seriously. So, why did he become so strong? If he didn't study, how could he do so well? Even a genius couldn't do it, unless the questions were leaked and the answers were memorized. It was too strange. Right now, there were many people who were watching Li Fan. Those who knew a little had long avoided Li Fan's edge. Only those who didn't know would choose to clash head-on with Li Fan, and in the end, fall into his hands. When Tangwa pushed the notebook in front of him, Fu Yinji snapped out of his daze and saw the words on the notebook. Have you found anything? Fu Yinji. No, I didn't find anything. That's why I found it strange. Tangwa. I know. Do you believe me? Fu Yinji paused for a moment and looked up at Tangwa. She was all smiles, and that smile seemed to be able to draw people in. At that moment, his heart skipped a beat, as if it didn't belong to him anymore. He hurriedly lowered his head and picked up a pen to write, Letter. Can you tell me what's going on? Tangwa. Why should I tell you what happened? Fu Yinji pondered for a moment before replying, This man is very dangerous. Both the Tang Corporation and his company are based in the city. Who knows, he might affect the Tang Corporation one day. Tangwa, do you think I have money? Fu Yinji, very rich. Tangwa, do you think I care about a mere Tang Corporation? Fu Yinji paused for a moment before replying, Then will you be suppressed by him at will? When Tangwa saw this, she laughed and continued to reply, Of course not. Fu Yinji, you told me that if the Tang Corporation encounters any problems in the future, I can help you beat him up. Peak. Chapter 2083. When Tangwa saw it, she smiled happily and replied, Empty words. Fu Yinji frowned. He looked at Tangwa and saw the young man in the coat. He seemed to have encountered some trouble and was trying to solve it. He really wanted to know what secrets Li Fan had on him. Tangwa was right. She was very rich, and according to the recent feedback, the people she had picked up were all doing well. They had signed a contract. She owned 49% of the shares of the other party's company. One company owned 49%. There were so many people she had picked up. Who knew how many companies she had opened? So, she was really rich. Originally, he had planned to poach some people who looked good to his side, but he didn't expect her to act so quickly. Even if he went to poach them now, they wouldn't be tempted. Her conditions were too tempting. She gave them money, business plans, and market research. She didn't care about anything else. Who wouldn't be tempted? Fu Yinji thought for a long time. Finally, he took out a black gold-inlaid business card from his pocket and put it in his notebook. He pushed it in front of Tanghua. He pursed his lips. He really didn't expect that he would fall so low to give away his business card just to find out a secret. The person he gave it to was a girl who was younger than him, but he didn't regret it at all. Tanghua raised her eyebrows slightly and touched the black gold-inlaid business card. There was Fu Yinji's name on the business card. There was no introduction. There was a string of phone numbers below and a beautiful golden rose in the upper left corner. She knew that Fu Yinji had been looking at her. She took out her phone and dialed the number. Sure enough, she heard Fu Yinji's phone number ring. She glanced at Fu Yinji and saw him show her his phone, indicating that this number could be reached. Tanghua continued to reply on the notebook. Legendary business tycoon, young Master Fu. I've heard a lot about you. This is the first time I've seen a black gold-inlaid business card. It feels good. It's expensive and classy. That rose is so beautiful. I'm envious. The person who carved this rose must be a famous master, right? The lines were smooth, the petals were exquisite, and the lines were clear. Fu Yinji didn't know what to say. This was the first time someone praised his business card. More importantly, wasn't it Fu Yinji's name and the phone number below? Legend has it that anyone who can get Fu Yinji's black gold-inlaid business card can call him and ask him to do something for them. As long as he thinks he can do it, he won't refuse. Even if you ask for 100 million or 200 million yuan, he will give it to you. Since Fu Yinji had taken the initiative to reveal his information, the system didn't stand on ceremony and decided to check it out. He suspected that the reason why this guy was so awesome every time was so that he could be together with his great host. Chapter 2084. In a certain university library, there was a very special scene. Of course, the weather was very cold at this time of the year, and very few people came to the library to read. The special scene happened in a very remote corner. Basically, no one noticed it. Next to a table, there was a boy and a girl sitting at each end. The two of them seemed to know each other, but at the same time, they didn't. If they didn't know each other well, they would occasionally raise their heads to look at each other and exchange a few words. If they didn't know each other well, they were too far apart. The boy sat by the window while the girl sat by the aisle. Tanghua supported her chin with one hand and looked up at the young man who was leaning against the window. He was wearing a black coat and had his head buried in his phone. The young man's side profile was very handsome, but it was a little unapproachable. He frowned and took a closer look. There was an incredulous expression on his face. His slender fingers subconsciously squeezed the fountain pen in his hand. He was obviously doubtful about the contents of the phone. She didn't know what was written in the phone. Time passed by, and they sat there for 3 hours. The young man's fingers kept scrolling through the phone screen, 1 page per second. Those who didn't know better would think that he was looking at some pictures. Dear host, does Fu Yinji read 10 lines at a glance? It should be about the same. No matter what, he is still a young business tycoon. If he didn't have some talent, how could he sit in this position? He is a genius and has been carefully nurtured and educated. Isn't reading 10 lines at a glance a must for a genius? The system muttered silently. Can you not be so obvious when you praise your own people? They are all on the same side. Isn't it awkward to praise them like this? It was another world filled with dog food. After Tanghua waited for about 4 hours, Fu Yinji finally stopped what he was doing. He pursed his lips and looked at Tanghua with a complicated gaze. This book had opened the door to a new world for him. He had never touched the internet before. It wasn't that he didn't want to touch these things, but that he didn't have the time to do so. He had been groomed as the successor of the Fu Corporation since he was young. Coupled with his talent, his family valued him even more, and he didn't have the time to look at the internet. However, this book of about 2 million words was flipped through at a speed of 1 page per second. In less than 4 hours, he had flipped through it nearly 10,000 times. Finally, He had roughly read through it once. At this time, not only were his fingers a little sore, but his eyes were also swollen with pain. But he didn't care about that. What he cared about was the content of the book. It was too shocking. Chapter 2085. Your eyes are a little red, Tangwa said. Put some eye drops on them to relieve your fatigue. Fu Yinji took the eye drops and felt a little conflicted. His cold expression also softened a little. Actually, his heart was much richer than his facial expression. This was the first time someone had bought eye drops for him. Back then, he had to finish reading a few bookshelves of books in 2 months, but no one had reminded him to use eye drops. Everyone in his family praised him and said that he could do it. They would only see the bright side of him. His father had passed away when he was very young. He was not close to his mother and had only seen her a few times. Grandpa did not like his mother, and she did not care much about him. Ever since his father passed away, the responsibility of the Fu family fell on his shoulders. He couldn't enjoy the happiness of family and childhood like other children in other families. When he was able to read, he was faced with piles of books that were taller than him. There were books from both ancient and modern times. Also, there were all kinds of dazzling data. Today, he had been looking at it for nearly 4 hours. In the past, it was common for him to do so. If his eyes were sore, he could just massage them and lie down to sleep and it would be fine. But no one would remember to give him eye drops and remind him to relieve his fatigue. Host, there is something wrong with that guy's gaze. Why is he looking at you with such a pitiful gaze? Look, those eyes seem to be glowing at you. The system was really strange. Maybe he lacks love. Indeed, in this world, he needs someone to give him warmth. What a pitiful child. Just a bottle of eye drops can move him to this extent. System, devil. Fu Yinji realized that his gaze was too direct. He coughed lightly and hurriedly opened the packaging and used it according to the instructions. Indeed, after dripping the cooling eye drops into his eyes, the fatigue in his eyes disappeared instantly. He closed his eyes for a while. When he opened them again to look at Tangwa, he said subconsciously, "If you have any trouble in the future, you can come and look for me." Although this girl gave him a strange feeling, he did not reject her at all. His heart was filled with a very special feeling. He did not understand it yet, but this did not stop him from wanting to help her. "I won't stand on ceremony." Hearing this, Fu Yinji was in a good mood. He paused for a moment before saying, "Everything written in that book is true." This was not a question, but an affirmation. There were so many coincidences that people had no choice but to believe that the Li Fan in the novel was the current Li Fan. The only difference between the book and reality was the Tangwa in front of him. Turning his head to think, if Tangwa had the same experience as the person inside, she wouldn't be sitting here and letting him read this book that was filled with the secrets of Li Fan's entire life. Li Fan had inadvertently obtained a system store. In the world, it was commonly known as the protagonist's golden finger, and he was the protagonist of that book. Li Fan, who had a cheat, changed his ordinary life and walked to the peak of life. If he met a god, he would kill a god. If he met a Buddha, he would kill a Buddha. Those who were at odds with him were either cannon fodder or villains. All of them would suffer. Those who obeyed him were either his women or his underlings. The Fu family was also mentioned in the novel, but the Fu family had never moved back to the country. He secretly guessed that the him inside had also noticed Li Fan's evil methods. After thinking about it, he decisively gave up on returning to the country. This made him feel better. At least the him inside was still relatively smart. The peak. Chapter 2086. Tangwa was also in there. Thinking of her experience, Fu Yinji's heart became complicated. Fu Yinji fell into deep thought. Even if he knew Li Fan's secret now, he couldn't take away the other party's golden finger. According to the book, one could buy anything in the system store as long as they had enough money. Li Fan now had a very powerful technology company. The various technology products developed were very popular among the people of the current generation. Such a good product was also the target of the country's support. It was impossible for him to make a move on the technology company to cut off Li Fan's funds. Even if it was cut off, it didn't mean that Li Fan didn't have any savings in his hands. Ordinary humans simply couldn't go against supernatural forces. Therefore, Fu Yinji frowned tightly. This matter was very difficult. He couldn't guarantee that if Li Fan found out that someone wanted to mess with him, he wouldn't buy something that would harm society, the public, take revenge on society, and fight to the death. He wasn't the only one who suspected Li Fan. Even the people of the country had probably noticed something unusual. It was just that they didn't know Li Fan's trump card. In addition, the products he took out made people very afraid. What he took out today might only be for the convenience of the common people. No one could guarantee that what he took out tomorrow wouldn't be a dangerous item that would harm society, the country, and the world. In just an instant, Fu Yinji felt that even if he knew that Li Fan had a golden finger, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. No matter how powerful he was, he wouldn't have these supernatural powers. Therefore, his gaze fell on Tanghua. Since she could take out Li Fan's secret, then she should have a certain understanding of the system store. The people she helped in charity might not necessarily not want to deal with Li Fan. Do you have any plans? Yes. Tanghua answered straightforwardly. Fu Yinji's eyes lit up. Then what do you plan to do? Good things naturally have to be handed over to the country. Tanghua still said straightforwardly. This kind of thing can cause a bad effect in anyone's hands. Right now, Li Fan has only made people go bankrupt. I don't know what will happen in the future. This thing is a good thing, but also a dangerous thing. Let's leave it to the powerful national weapons to protect. Fu Yinji. Is that so? But he thought that she was borrowing the power of the country to take revenge for her personal grudge. Well, no matter what the reason was, he thought it was a good idea. If Li Fan had hidden himself a little, been careful, and did not offend the public, he would not have provoked these people. But he was too high profile, and he had already become a threat to many people. Whoever provoked him would go bankrupt and be unable to make a comeback for the rest of their lives. There was no reason for that. Especially for a few women, he almost caused them to jump off a building because they couldn't figure it out. He even made those women's ex-fiancés miserable. It could be said that Li Fan's appearance was bound to disrupt the market. With his temperament, if his company were to expand, he would still have to face the entire country in the future. No one was willing to watch such an existence grow. He even lived with so many women in public, clearly declaring to everyone that he was a local tyrant. What should we do then? Fu Yinji asked again. Unknowingly, he was already sitting beside Tanghua. After all, such a big event was too far away and too loud. It would easily attract the attention of others. Noticing this, Tanghua patted Fu Yinji's shoulder and said smilingly, "You can talk, but don't get so close to me. I'm afraid of men." System. This vengeful behavior. Peak. Chapter 2087. Fu Yinji also stiffened for a moment. Only then did he realize that he was so close to Tanghua and that she had even patted him. According to the past, when he was in close contact with the opposite sex, his body should have had an uncomfortable reaction. His face would subconsciously turn pale, accompanied by cold sweat and a red rash. This was a natural reaction of his body, and he couldn't control it. But at this moment, he actually didn't have any reaction. He was surprised and hurriedly touched his forehead. There didn't seem to be cold sweat. He took out his phone and took a picture, but he didn't find any red rashes on his neck and face. This discovery made Fu Yinji silent for a moment. Could it be that he had recovered? Wait for me, Fu Yinji said to Tanghua, and got up to go to the librarian's seat. He remembered that the librarian today was a female classmate. Although it looked very childish, he had to try and see if he had recovered. Tanghua sat in her seat and had no intention of going over. A minute later, she saw Fu Yinji walk back with a pale face and lips, accompanied by cold sweat dripping down his forehead. Seeing that he wasn't in a good state, Tanghua hurriedly got up and walked over. Fu Yinji almost said that he didn't need her help, but she had already held his arm. He should have felt uncomfortable, but when Tanghua held his arm, his condition actually improved a lot. Fu Yinji slowly calmed down and his face regained its color. The red rash on his neck was gradually dissipating and his cold sweat was no longer dripping. Hence, in the end, He only moved his lips and didn't reject Tangwa's help. Are you sick? Tangwa asked calmly. If one didn't know the situation, they would think that Tangwa was scolding him. Fu Yinji nodded. Since Tangwa knew about Li Fan's miraculous things and her whereabouts, Fu Yinji already treated her as an equal. It's a strange illness that no one can treat for me. Fu Yinji almost said that he had a phobia. This was a psychological illness and the symptoms were different. But when she was so close to him just now, he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, he felt better. This time, Fu Yinji looked at Tangwa in a different light. He said seriously, but now, I have a guess. You might be my medicine. Fu Yinji really did not think of anything else. He had never come into contact with a girl before. She didn't know what it meant to be moved or to like someone. Don't watch TV, don't read romance novels. Every day, he read professional books, business planning, data analysis, and so on. Combined with the way Tangwa interacted with him just now, he came to the conclusion that Tangwa might be his drug. Really, he was just stating this result very seriously. Moreover, he wanted her to treat his illness. You want me to treat your illness? Tangwa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Did she meet someone with a high IQ but a low EQ this time? Yes, ever since I was young. You were the only one who didn't make me feel uncomfortable. I think you're the breakthrough for my treatment, so I'll definitely reward you. If you need any help in the future, I will do my best. As for Li Fan, we can also join hands. After saying this, Fu Yinji felt that he had gone crazy. He didn't even have time to negotiate, and he had already given out his most generous offer. He must have gone crazy. But when he saw the girl in front of him thinking, he was still a little nervous. She wouldn't refuse, right? Was the condition not enough? Peak. Although this project sounds very tempting, we have to leave a way out for ourselves, right? No one can guarantee what will happen midway. What your mother and I are thinking is, as long as we invest our funds into this project, Tangkor will have a large share of the profits. When the time comes, we will have more say in this project and a lot of things will be easier to do. Tangwa paused for a moment and said, what if the Zhangs suddenly withdraw their investment? Tangkor was in charge of this project, so it was good that they had the final say. But if the Zhang family were to withdraw their investment and not be able to find outside help, wouldn't their money be wasted? If they don't leave a way out, what will they do in the future? Mother Tang was silent for a moment. Xiaoguo is already engaged to the Zhang family's son. Our two families have always had a good relationship. For the sake of your grandfather, I don't think they would do anything that would harm themselves. Is the in-laws really that strong? Grandfather passed away a few years ago. Tangwa continued, this is only an engagement, so it can be cancelled at any time. Plus, this marriage was arranged for me by grandfather when he was still alive. The peak. Chapter 2089. Most of the time, the two families are doing it for the sake of Grandpa and Old Master Zhang. It's not because Zhang Xing and I are engaged. Dad and Mom have invested all the money in it. If anyone wants to mess with us, it's too easy. Hearing Tangwa's words, the couple thought about it silently for a while. Then, they felt that they were too impulsive. That project could indeed make a lot of money, but if there were problems in the middle, the money would be wasted. Not to mention other things, just one thing alone was something they couldn't bear, and that was the Zhang family withdrawing their investment. In fact, this project was mainly in charge of Tang Group. The Zhang family was responsible for investing the money. The money wasn't in one go. And because Tang Group was in charge of the home ground, they would definitely invest a lot of money in the first half. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that Tangwa's words made sense. They dispelled their previous thoughts. When they had a meeting with the shareholders, the two of them didn't talk about using their own money to make up for it and give the company an advantage. The current Tang Group was no longer just two people. It was the Tang Group of the entire shareholders. After Tangwa's reminder, the two of them thought a lot. This was everyone's business. It didn't make sense for them to shoulder it. If the shareholders weren't satisfied, then everyone would pool the money. Tangwa didn't know how the couple discussed with the shareholders in the end. Anyway, There was still some time before the project started. Even if it started, Tang Group's money was enough to last for a while. When it was almost done, the Zhang family would start to invest. When it was almost half done, Li Fan, this accident, happened. Calculating the time, there were still a few months. It wouldn't be so fast. Nothing happened to Tang Group, but something happened to Tangwa's roommate, Ran Jingdan. One day, when Tangwa came back, she found Ran Jingdan sitting by the bed in a daze with a pale face. This reminded Tangwa that there was indeed a day when the original owner came back and saw Ran Jingdan acting a little strange. She asked a few questions, and the other party said that nothing happened. The original owner was a little busy at that time. She went out in a hurry and planned to come back later to ask about the specific situation. Then, Ran Jingdan wasn't around for a few days. When she came back, it seemed that nothing had happened. She even asked the other party. The other party said that the matter had been resolved, and there was no problem. This time, Tangwa was not in a hurry. She carefully asked Ran Jingdan what had happened. Ran Jingdan was a proud and somewhat headstrong girl. In the face of Tangwa's question, she still said nothing, because she thought that Tangwa couldn't help her at all. After all, her father had caused too much trouble this time. Although they lived in the same dormitory, the original owner kept a low profile. She never flaunted her identity as the daughter of the Tang family, nor did she show her face outside. The Tang couple protected her very well, so Ran Jingdan and the other roommates only knew that the original owner came from a wealthy family, but they didn't know that she was the daughter of the family. She didn't say anything at that time because she thought that even if Tangwa's family was well off, there was no way she could help her. So what if they knew his identity? No one would spend a lot of effort and money to help a person they only knew and had an ordinary relationship with for no reason. They also had no obligation to do so. What? Are you leaving? I'll go back and take a look. Ran Jingdan packed her things and pulled out a smile. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. How about I accompany you back? If there's anything, I can help you. Ran Jingdan quickly shook her head. No, I'll take care of this matter myself. She seemed to not want Tangwa to be involved in it. Seeing this, Tangwa no longer forced her. The mystery was about to be revealed. She planned to secretly follow Ran Jingdan and see why she followed Li Fan. She guessed that this was the time to make the arrogant Ran Jingdan yield. Peak. Chapter 2090. Tangwa secretly followed Ran Jingdan to a casino. The casino was a separate building. Just by looking at it from the outside, the building was resplendent and magnificent. Not only could one play games in this building, there were also other entertainment projects. There were a total of 12 floors, and each time, there was a unique style. For many people, this was the most intoxicating place. Host, let me tell you a piece of news. Li Fan and his women are also playing in this casino. Although she had expected it, Li Fan, the male lead, was really haunting her. He was everywhere. Originally, she wanted to go up and see what kind of trouble Ran Jingdan had encountered. Hearing that Li Fan was here, she planned to find a place to wait. After all, she needed to figure out how Ran Jingdan and Li Fan were related. When she walked into the casino, she was invited in. In order to avoid attracting the attention of the people inside, she also called the waiter to help her change the chips and casually played a few rounds in the hall. She was indeed casually betting. There were wins and losses, and if she counted, she had earned a little. The system couldn't help but sigh. If the host was a little more serious, she should have earned more. Just casually throwing it, she wouldn't lose anything. It could be seen that her luck was getting better and better. It wasn't like when they were first bound. No matter what the host did, she was the unluckiest one. Thinking of what happened back then, the system still felt a little uncomfortable. It was stupid in the past. It had already guessed why its host's luck was getting better and better. Because the host was in a good mood, she would be happy when she was in a good mood, and she would laugh when she was happy. It was said that girls who liked to laugh would not have bad luck. When Tangwa heard the system's explanation, she almost laughed to death. What the hell? A girl who liked to laugh would not have bad luck. Her luck was good. So what if it was a smile? It was clearly her who controlled fate and locked her own luck. She also accidentally did some good things and had merit on her. However, She always felt that the merit on her soul was more than she imagined. She had guessed who she used to be, but she didn't insist on figuring it out. The current days were not bad. It didn't matter if the shuttle ended or not. Tangle played for about half an hour and heard from the system that Ranjingdan had already met Li Fan. They were on the 11th floor. The reason was that Ranjingdan's father had not only lost all his assets, but also owed the other party a lot of money. Even after selling off all the real estate in the family, he still couldn't pay it back. No matter how Ranjingdan begged, she naturally had no way to make the other party agree to extend her time. After all, the Rand family had no money left for such a large sum of money. Chapter 2091. Ranjingdan was furious. If it weren't for the fact that her father was still in the other party's hands, she would have cursed out loud. When Tangwa heard this, she also raised her eyebrows slightly. Her goal was so clear that it seemed like a trap. Tongzi, check that bald man, a few other people, and Ranjingdan's father. See if there's any grudges between them and if there's a trap. The system agreed and then fell silent. Even though the internet was a huge amount of data, under the current system, it was still easy to check something. Ranjingdan was naturally unwilling to follow the bald man, and the other party's conditions were too humiliating. If it was just for her to compromise, she would definitely agree in the end if she couldn't think of a way. However, the other party actually wanted. Thinking of this, Ranjingdan felt incomparable despair. At this moment, a voice entered Ranjingdan's ears. Ranjingdan, why are you here? Ranjingdan turned her head in confusion, only feeling that the voice was somewhat familiar. She turned around and saw Miao Han walking towards her. She replied softly, why are you here? I have something to do. Did something happen at home? I heard everything. When Miao Han said this, Ranjingdan's face became even paler. Ever since she was young, she had never been in such a sorry state. Especially when she saw Li Fan walking over with a few women, she wished she could find a hole to hide in. Among these women, there were many that she was familiar with and were even from the same school. They must have heard what the bald man said just now. How much money does your father owe them? Miao Han's heart stirred as she asked. Because of Miao Han's appearance, Tangwa stopped in her tracks and hid in the crowd. Everyone was attracted by Ranjingdan's side, so naturally, they noticed her. Ranjingdan's face was filled with despair as she said with absent-minded eyes, 80 million. Her family's total assets were not even 80 million. Now that she had nothing, how could she take out 80 million? Even though she was very puzzled in her heart, how could her father lose close to 100 million all of a sudden? Her father was not like this in the past. He had never come into contact with these things. It was just that she no longer had the mood to care about those things, because other than the money her father owed these people, he had also misappropriated public funds. If she did not return the money within 3 days, not only would her family face a huge debt, her father would also have to go to court. She admitted that her father had made a mistake. It was wrong of him to misappropriate public funds for gambling. But after all, he was the father who had doted on her since she was young. Other than this, he had always been a good father. Her mother was still waiting in the hospital for her good news. No matter what, she had to get through this sadness, but she couldn't agree to that bald man's request. She was fine with herself, but how could she drag her mother down with her? The bald man's condition was that as long as she and her mother agreed, they wouldn't have to pay back the debt. After all, they would help her father make up for the misappropriated funds. After all, it had only been used for a few days, so it shouldn't be a problem to make up for it. Ranjingdan buried her head. She didn't know who the other party was, but she knew that the other party had proposed this condition to humiliate her father. She even guessed that they might have used some tricks to frame her father. No matter what, it had already happened. What could she do? Despair. She finally knew what despair was. Ranjingdan, maybe Brother Fan can help you. Miao Han's voice drifted into Ranjingdan's ears, causing her to raise her head. Vertex. Chapter 2092. Ranjingdan looked at Li Fan, who was surrounded by a few women, and her heart skipped a beat. Would Li Fan help her? Her previous attitude towards Li Fan was so bad. Even if she knew that the other party could help her, she still couldn't like Li Fan. Moreover, how could Li Fan help someone like her who didn't like him and even hated him? It's not like he's doing charity. However, she was already at her wit's end. If she agreed to the bald man's condition, her entire family would be humiliated. In the future, her father would also live in self-blame. If she begged Li Fan, even if she suffered any grievances, it would only be her alone. Speaking of which, it was a lot more worth it. Even if she hated Li Fan, if she could solve this matter, she was willing to lower her head. Why should I help you? Earlier, Li Fan had indeed had enough of Ran Jingdan's bad attitude towards him. Hearing that the other party wanted to borrow money from him, he was finally able to let out a sigh of relief. Ran Jingdan was usually a high and mighty young miss in front of him. He had heard her call him a playboy more than once. He had a lot of women and was still fooling around. So what if he fooled around? That was because his woman had good taste, was tactful, obedient, and was willing to follow him. He really didn't expect that the young miss who was usually high and mighty in front of him would actually use such a low attitude to ask him to lend her money. He really spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Ran Jingdan had suffered a setback, and all her arrogance had been shattered in an instant. Li Fan's mood was extremely good. Of course, he wouldn't agree just because of Ran Jingdan's request. That would make him seem too easy to talk to. Ran Jingdan was very good-looking, with fair skin and long legs. It could be said that among the women he knew, Ran Jingdan's legs were the longest and most good-looking. The first time he saw Ran Jingdan, he was attracted by her legs. It was impossible to say that he didn't have any improper thoughts about Ran Jingdan. However, this woman had always hated him. If he didn't poke at her spirit, even if she came to his side in the future, she would still act high and mighty, disobedient. He didn't like it. After all, he had a lot of women. Obedient women naturally had to be pampered a little. This kind of disobedient woman, of course, had to obey him, so as to not bully the other women by his side. What do you want? Ran Jingdan had already figured it out. Her parents had raised her for so long. She absolutely couldn't sit back and do nothing. This time, she was the one begging Li Fan. If the other party was willing to help, she would agree to any conditions. She might lose a lot, even her dignity, but she would feel guilty for the rest of her life if she left her father alone. Even if Li Fan took advantage of the situation at this time, she would not be angry. If he did not take advantage of the situation, then he would not be called Li Fan. He was originally a despicable and shameless villain, so don't expect him to do good deeds. She agreed to any of his conditions, and he would help her save her father. It was very fair. Be my woman and listen to me in the future. You're not allowed to say anything bad about me. If I tell you to smile at me, then smile at me. If it had been before, Ran Jingdan would have been very angry after hearing those words. She would have immediately scolded him for being despicable and shameless. But now, she was very calm, and she believed that this was indeed a condition that Li Fan could propose. She raised a smile, and just as she was about to answer, a heavenly voice sounded, "Ran Jingdan, I already said that if there's anything, you can look for me. Do you not treat me as a friend?" Tanghua, who had watched the entire process, and with the information collected by the system, she had already figured out the truth behind Ran Jingdan becoming Li Fan's woman. Peak. Chapter 2093. She was a little impressed by Ran Jingdan's magnanimity. Even though Li Fan's conditions were very humiliating, she was very clear that the difficulties she encountered were not something that an ordinary person could solve. Presumably, she had already calculated in her heart that agreeing to the bald man was more beneficial to her or Li Fan. Obviously, it was the latter. Since she had chosen to agree, she, who was so proud, would not cry and pitifully agree to the conditions, making her seem very weak. On the contrary, she was prepared to agree frankly, thinking that this was a fair deal for both sides. In the storyline, even if Ran Jingdan became Li Fan's woman, she would still have a foothold in the business world. It was unknown if it was because of this incident that year that she became a very powerful trader and financial analyst. Tangwa's lips curved. She would not be polite with such a talent. In the future, if her parents were to leave their current company, Ranjingdan would be able to help a lot. System. The host is a big cattle farmer and has never suffered a loss. Ranjingdan was very surprised by Tangwa's appearance. Her eyes were somewhat moved. She thought of something and shook her head. Thank you for coming, but you can't help me with this matter. Why don't you believe me? Ranjingdan replied indifferently. It's not that I believe you, but I don't want to cause trouble for you. After all, the price of helping me is too great. She did not want to implicate anyone, especially someone like Tangwa who still cared about her. Li Fan was a little annoying, but if the bald man looked for trouble, he would find Li Fan in the future and would not vent his anger on Tangwa. Yes, that's right. Ranjingdan also had her own plans. She was not some little white flower, so naturally, she would calculate the side that was beneficial to her. I'm not helping you for free. Tangwa's eyes were full of smiles, and then she called for a waiter. I want to see your boss. Miss, if you want to see our boss, please make an appointment first. Then if I want to see your manager, the lobby manager wouldn't need an appointment, right? This request, the waiter indeed had no way to refuse. Soon, the lobby manager in a suit came to Tangwa and asked her what she needed in a very friendly manner. I want to see your boss. Tangwa didn't wait for the lobby manager to use the previous set of excuses. She continued, I found a very serious matter. There are people in your casino who are cheating and colluding to set a trap for others. I don't think Casino City wants to see such a thing happen, right? As the most formal casino in this city, the person in charge of the casino naturally didn't want such a thing to happen. Once there were too many cases of cheating, the casino would lose its credibility. Customers wouldn't come here to play anymore. There were many other entertainment activities in the casino. Miss, do you have any evidence? Yes, there is ample evidence. Tangwa said with a smile and waved her phone. The evidence is here. If your boss doesn't want to see me, you can take my phone up. Of course, the lobby manager didn't dare to take Tangwa's phone up. Now everyone was watching, and with his eyesight, he wouldn't be wrong. This miss was not simple, so it was better not to offend her. Since things like cheating and setting a trap had happened, their casino must take care of it to the end. They could also use this matter to win the favor of other customers. Thinking of this, without hesitation, he quickly went to find the boss. The summit. Chapter 2094. The evidence provided by Tangwa was very sufficient. It included the text messages that the bald man and a few other people colluded with each other. The images captured by the surveillance camera were enough to let people understand that they knew each other and were very familiar with each other. More importantly, there were several transactions between the bald man and them that amounted to hundreds of thousands of yuan. The most important thing was that Tangwa still had some grudges between the bald man and Ranjingdan's father. Ranjingdan's father actually worked in an entertainment company and managed many new artists in this industry. And this bald man was the boss of a company. He was more lecherous. The only thing that Ranjingdan's father had offended the other party was that one time when he was eating, he found that a good-looking young lady had something mixed in her wine. That young lady was about the same age as his daughter. He sympathized with her and asked her in a low voice if she wanted to leave this place. Then, he took her away. Naturally, the bald man held a grudge. He found someone to set up a trap for Ranjingdan's father to fall into. In the end, he fell deeper and deeper. What was disappointing was that the young lady finally hooked up with another boss who was better looking than the bald man. After Ranjingdan's father got into trouble, there was not a single word of condolence. Ranjingdan looked at the evidence and smiled with tears in her eyes. Her father was still her father. He did not gamble for pleasure, but because he offended someone and was schemed against. Moreover, he provoked the other party because he did a good deed out of kindness. Even if the person he saved later failed to live up to her father's expectations, she did not blame her father at all, because her father thought of her and helped the other party. So, how much did her father love her? Even if he was in that circle, he would not be wrapped in mud. Since he was set up, Ranjingdan's father would naturally not return the money that he owed the bald man. Moreover, The gambling city wanted to punish them because he cheated and colluded with people to set up a trap. The boss of the gambling city was not a soft-hearted person. Tanghua and Ran Jingdan did not care about how they were punished. They took Ran Jingdan's father and left the casino. From the beginning to the end, Tanghua did not even look at Li Fan. When she took out the evidence, Li Fan seemed to have been forgotten by others. Li Fan's previous behavior, compared to Tanghua's current behavior, also caused a lot of discussion. Naturally, he didn't look too good, and the women around him were all comforting him. In short, Li Fan bore a grudge against Tanghua in his heart. Today, he had been slapped in the face. He was furious. He thought that one day, he would let Tanghua know what kind of person he was. Tanghua, thank you for today, but Ran Jingdan was still very worried about whether the bald man and Li Fan would find trouble with Tanghua. Even if they didn't have to pay back the money, the casino wasn't obligated to get all the money back for them. After all, although the other party had cheated and set a trap, Ran's father had lost the money himself, so they still had nothing left. Unless they called the police. However, once they called the police, the matter would become serious. Looking at the pale-faced Ran Jingdan's father, Ran Jingdan fell into another difficult situation. After all, she still needed a sum of money to fill the gap in his company. Now that only a few days had passed, there shouldn't be a problem to fill in the gaps. Tanghua took out a card and a contract and handed it to the father and daughter. Sign it. This is your slave contract. The money will be given to you in advance as your salary. Look carefully and then sign it. In the future, you can only receive monthly living expenses unless your salary pays off the debt. The Summit. Chapter 2095. Both Ran Jingdan's father and Ran Jingdan were capable. They could do something, especially Ran Jingdan. This woman was ruthless to herself and dared to work hard. She was such a good employee, so she must sign her on as soon as possible. Ran Jingdan and Mr. Ran were stunned for a moment. In the end, they read the contract carefully and signed it without hesitation. So be it. This time, she was really willing to work for Tanghua for the rest of her life. She was very happy and did not feel humiliated at all. It was really worth it. She did not expect to find a golden thigh. Mr. Ran had embezzled a lot of public funds. It was 20 million yuan. A roommate who could easily fork out 20 million yuan. If this was not a golden thigh, then what was? She was going to hug it. Tanghua felt Ran Jingdan's happiness, and her heart thumped. Why did this woman seem happier than her? System. Dear host, it's normal for her to be happy. I understand. Why? Who wouldn't be happy to hug a golden thigh? Only I, who have been hugging a golden thigh, know how thick the golden thigh is. I want to hug it even more. I want to use glue to stick myself to your leg like a pendant. Tanghua, they first went to visit Mrs. Ran. After knowing that Mr. Ran was fine, she recuperated in peace. Mr. Ran paid for the money and resigned. He took a sum of money and went to another city according to Tanghua's instructions to start a new life. Carrying the business plan and various materials that Tanghua gave him, he started a difficult life of entrepreneurship. Ran Jingdan also started to get busy. After coming back that day, Tanghua gave her many books and asked her to read them while helping Mr. Ran. Tanghua even said to her, I've invested so much in you. Don't disappoint me. Whether I can become the richest person depends on you. Ran Jingdan expressed that she was under a lot of pressure. The richest person. It was very difficult. Tanghua looked expectant. She could only grit her teeth and work hard. She was very happy to be working so hard to earn money. Miao Han returned to the dormitory a few times. When she saw Tanghua and Ran Jingdan, she wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she didn't say anything. Li Fan met Tanghua a few times by chance, but Tanghua treated him coldly and unapproachable, which made him very annoyed. Later, when Tanghua and Zhang Xing met, she heard the other party ask about Li Fan. Li Fan, a junior from the same school. Tanghua stirred her coffee cup. She was curious about what Li Fan had said to Zhang Xing. The way Zhang Xing looked at Tanghua was as if he was looking at a woman who had made him a cuckold. This made Tanghua a little funny, but she still explained it again. I'm not familiar with him, and he has a lot of girlfriends. Do you know about that new technology company? It is said that their company has developed a new product. Not only that, they are also planning to enter the pharmaceutical industry. Speaking of this, Zhang Xing sighed with envy and jealousy, because he knew that Li Fan was the boss behind that company. He was too young and too powerful, which made him lose his mind. So Li Fan found him and said that he didn't love Tanghua, so he shouldn't delay her. He naturally thought that Tanghua and Li Fan had hooked up, but the more it was like this, the more he didn't want to break off the engagement with Tanghua. This woman dared to make him a cuckold, so how could he let her have her way? Tanghua felt the ruthlessness in Zhang Xing's eyes, but she didn't care. I'll pick you up on the weekend. Zhang Xing already had a plan in his heart. Didn't Li Fan take a fancy to his woman? He didn't go any further because he was concerned about his image and the relationship between the two families. He was afraid of leaving a bad impression on her. Since they were already engaged, it should be natural for them to be together. If Li Fan wanted this woman, she had to be his leftover. Young master, do you need to do anything? The old butler saw that Fu Yinji kept staring at the photo on the table. It was a scene of a man and a woman in a cafe. His heart skipped a beat. If young master likes this girl, let's put pressure on the Zhang family to break off the engagement and marry her back. There was nothing wrong with being a little rough. Girls nowadays liked this kind of overbearing CEO very much. Butler, you need to go to the hospital to see a doctor. It is indeed easy to get dementia when you are old. Fu Yinji said coldly, I don't want to be hated by her. She won't like doing such a thing. The old butler. He really didn't understand why his young master looked so obedient when he mentioned that girl. She couldn't see it. Peak. Chapter 2096. The appearance of the pharmaceutical company under Li Fan attracted the attention of countless people. Especially the medicine developed by the pharmaceutical company, it made all parties unable to sit still. Although it had not reached the level of being able to cure cancer, being able to truly remove scars had shocked the entire pharmaceutical industry. In the past, shallow scars could still be slowly removed using various techniques. But once the wound was deep, it was impossible to remove it after forming a scar. Although the medicine developed by the pharmaceutical company under Li Fan could not completely remove the deep scars immediately, many people saw hope from their test reports. Li Fan had been planning for the pharmaceutical industry for a long time. He also wanted to directly take out something that would shock the world, but the woman beside him reminded him that he had been too high-profile recently. When Tanghua was not looking, Li Fan and his women had actually avoided a lot of danger. His magical experience, the things in his hands, it was impossible for no one to covet them. Those people did not dare to be brazen, but they still had ways in the dark. After all this, Li Fan did not directly make a big fuss. Recently, he was also quite busy dealing with those people who wanted to steal his things. There were all kinds of strange items in Li Fan's mystical system store. Using these magical things, Li Fan had already found out those people who had designs on him. As a result, many enterprises in the country had all kinds of turmoil recently. It was either the capital chain was broken, or there was a problem with the management. There was also the boss who had an accident. Although he did not die, he was still sent to the hospital. Li Fan did it. Those people arranged for people to get close to Li Fan, kidnap his women, or go to the company to steal experimental reports and documents. Then he got angry and pulled out all these people. Oh, hearing this, Tanghua was not surprised, nor did she sympathize. The one who provoked him first was cheap. They clearly knew that Li Fan was strange, but they still wanted to greedily steal his things and even touch his women. It would be strange if they did not drive this kid crazy. He did not die this time, but it might not be the next time. The system observed Tangua's expression and realized that she did not care about these things at all. If it had a tongue, it would really want to spit it out. It seemed that the host had never thought of helping those people who had been tricked. Even if I pick up trash, I will pick up the best. I will not pick up real trash. I am really not a trash collector. The system was speechless. Recently, Li Fan is becoming more and more arrogant. Fu Yinji sat beside Tanghua. Although there was still a distance between them, all parties have sent people to test him, but no one has managed to find out anything useful. Fusang country also sent a female assassin, intending to use her beauty to seduce Li Fan. I didn't expect that female assassin to become his woman. When he said this, Fu Yanji's expression was a little uncomfortable. It's the same as in that book. Although Tanggua's intervention had changed a lot of things in the current situation, as long as Tanggua did not interfere, the plot was still the same as before. The female assassin from Fusang who had originally killed Li Fan was still subdued by him, and she even willingly became his woman. Currently, she was hidden in the villa by him. Previously, Li Fan did some things that caused many enterprises to be in turmoil. His actions have already affected this society. If there is no solution, the higher-ups may use force to restrain him. Can they restrain you? Tanggua asked with a smile. Vertex. Chapter 2097. I can't, Fu Yanji said coldly, but his cold eyes were on Tanggua's face. Coincidentally, when he was looking at Tanggua, Tanggua was also looking at him. Being stared at by a girl like this, Fu Yanji looked away uncomfortably, but he couldn't help but glance at her from the corner of his eyes. The corners of Tanggua's mouth curved. Have you been feeling better recently? It's still the same. Fu Yanji thought of something and his ears turned red. I can't get too close to the opposite sex. I can't even help the maids. At this point, he met her eyes again. But it's not a problem to sit beside you. So when are you going to treat me? System. Ah, isn't this good? It's pretty good. I can only get close to the host, a girl. Fu Yanji actually didn't think that there was anything bad about this illness. After all, he didn't like to get too close to the opposite sex. The only bad thing was that if the opposite sex got too close to him, his body would feel uncomfortable. If it could be treated, he still hoped to be able to cure it. Let's talk about Li Fan. Even if Fu Yanji was very talented in business, when he met someone like Li Fan who used mysterious supernatural powers, he still couldn't think of any way to restrain the other party. Even if he knew about the system store, what could he do? From the recent turmoil in some enterprises in the country, this person was a madman. If he couldn't instantly grasp the other party's weakness and defeat him, then he would receive the revenge of a mad dog. He remembered that in the book, Li Fan was becoming more and more arrogant and had already flouted the law, so the higher-ups had no choice but to take forceful action. Even if they used very powerful weapons, they still couldn't do anything to Li Fan. In the end, the government had no choice but to compromise and sit down with the other party to negotiate peacefully. In the end, Li Fan obtained a transcendent position in this country, so naturally, his actions were different from ordinary people. For example, if a rich second generation offended him or his woman, he would kill that person in a private room. No one would pursue his crime. He could say that it was the other party who offended him. Even if the government felt helpless, because the other party was mysterious and powerful, they had no choice but to help him clean up. The Li Fan in the plot, this world no longer had any restrictions on him. Because of this, there were more and more women around him. Other than the dozens of women who were rightfully valued by him, there were also some who were given to him by others. There was no lack of people in this world who wanted to curry favor with such a strong person. As long as they could connect with Li Fan, what was the sacrifice of a woman? Li Fan had even built a palace on a certain famous mountain, and the people living in the palace were all his women. I thought that you have great powers and would be able to solve this problem. Tanggua blinked. Even the legendary young master of the Fu family couldn't solve it. Is it something a university student like me can solve? Fu Yanji said seriously. I believe you can. So, young master. Fu Yanji was stunned for a moment before he said, since you're so capable, there's nothing wrong with sucking up to you. Young Master Fu is different from what the rumors say. In the rumors, you're very cold, but in reality, you're trying to cozy up to a girl. Fu Yanji's expression did not change. He thought that since the girl in front of him knew that Li Fan was extraordinary, she was naturally not simple. System. Fu Yanji, your character has been ruined. Please put away your sparkling little eyes. Chapter 2098. In the end, Fu Yinji didn't get any useful information from Tanghua. He only knew that she probably wouldn't let Li Fan continue. He had a vague guess that she seemed to be waiting for an opportunity. As for what this opportunity was, he didn't know. She was too mysterious. She was so mysterious that her entire body was covered in fog. People couldn't see clearly, but they wanted to figure it out. Fu Yinji felt that there was a kind of Li Fan acting like a tyrant in this world, and that world was a well. She was the person sitting at the mouth of the well, silently looking at the person in the well. When he came back to his senses, he smiled and thought that such a thought was very strange. Seeing that Tanghua had put all the books back, he remembered that it was Friday, so she had to leave early. "Are you going home?" Tanghua looked back and smiled. "No, my fiancé is here to pick me up for dinner." "Fiancé?" Fu Yinji's smile disappeared. He almost forgot that she still had a fiancé who didn't have a strong presence. "Take care." He pursed his lips and didn't look up. From Tanghua's point of view, it was as if all eyes were on the books on the table. In fact, he didn't read a single word. His mind was filled with the thought that she was going on a date with her fiancé. If she was an ordinary girl, he might really want to be a domineering CEO, like Li Fan, directly bankrupting the Zhang family and snatching her away. But she wasn't. If he did that, he would definitely make her unhappy and ruin her plan. All the photos he asked people to take showed that she and Zhang Xing were very unfamiliar. Even when they were dating, they had never held hands. Was she the kind of person who would wrong herself? Since she didn't like Zhang Xing, it definitely wouldn't last long. Then why did she agree to get engaged to him? There must be some plan. In fact, Fu Yinji had already guessed what Tanghua was waiting for. She was waiting for the chance to change her fate. She was waiting for the chance to change her fate. Zhang Xing had given up on her in order to protect his family. And she definitely had to wait for Zhang Xing to show such a face. After all, their engagement was set by the older generation. At present, the two families didn't have any conflicts, and there was also a joint project. If she took the initiative to break off the engagement, it would be disadvantageous to the Tang family. In an instant, Fu Yinji thought a lot. He finally comforted himself. His heart was no longer angry. He was just a fiancé who was about to pass his prime. Sooner or later, he would have to step down. Why should he bother with such a short-sighted person? Have a good weekend. Have fun. Tanghua had only taken 2 steps when she heard Fu Yinji's blessings. She clearly felt that he was unhappy just now. So why did he sound so happy now? She turned around and saw Fu Yinji looking straight at her. His expression was still cold and indifferent, but the focus in his eyes made her waver. She was so obedient. Was she trying to seduce her? Me too. She really didn't know what kind of weird things that guy was imagining in his head to make himself so happy in just a few seconds. The system, who had witnessed all of this, felt a little stifled, if it had a heart. Why did he always feel that this world was filled with malice? Tanghua went back to her dormitory to change her clothes. When she arrived at the school gate, Zhang Xing was already waiting for her. Seeing her come out, Zhang Xing gave her a bouquet of very beautiful roses, causing the surrounding girls to cover their mouths and scream. "Do you like it?" "It's beautiful." Tanghua hugged the roses and smiled beautifully. When she got into the car, she felt a gaze from a certain direction. She turned around and looked. The building was very tall, and it was very far from here. At the top of the stairs, there seemed to be a dark figure looking in her direction. Peek. Who would have thought that Zhang Xinghui would tamper with her wine glass in front of everyone when she wasn't paying attention? Ordinary people wouldn't care about this at all. They just needed to distract the other party for a moment. Moreover, this was a high-end restaurant. Every seat had a cubicle, and the situation inside could not be seen from other seats. While Tanghua was busy ordering, Zhang Xing was pouring wine for her. In any case, Zhang Xing was determined to take advantage of him today. With such a beautiful fiancée, wouldn't it be a loss if that bratly fan took advantage of her in the future? Seeing that Tanghua had finished all the red wine, Zhang Xing became more and more excited. Vertex. Chapter 2100. Just as Fu Yinji was about to rest, he received a message. When he opened it, he saw Zhang Xing helping the blushing Tanggua get into the car. All his sleepiness disappeared in an instant. He dialed the driver's number. Prepare the car. Although things seemed strange, how could she be drunk when she was so smart? Seeing such a situation, Fu Yinji couldn't calm down. When Fu Yinji arrived at the door of a room in the hotel, Tanggua was standing there unscathed. Seeing this, he heaved a sigh of relief and walked up to her quickly. He asked coldly, "Are you all right? You sent someone to follow me?" Tanggua asked with a smile. Fu Yinji was a little helpless, but he quickly reacted and said seriously, "After all, I still have to rely on you and protect your safety. As long as Li Fan is in the country, my Fu family won't be able to bring him back safely. That thing of his is too powerful." That's a good reason. Tanggua didn't pursue this matter. She already knew that Fu Yinji had sent someone to follow her. She didn't reject it, which meant that she tacitly agreed. System. Bad woman. Look at how you scared the innocent young master. Fu Yinji heard no movement in the room, and his expression darkened. What's going on? Nothing. Tanggua had planned to do something, but she didn't expect Fu Yinji to come so quickly. System. I'm worried about you. How can I not come? Fu Yinji didn't ask much and only said, "Are you going back to school or home?" "Let's go back to school." At this time, Tanggua didn't want to go home. When Zhang Xing reacted, she didn't know what he would do. But that wasn't important. Zhang Xing was still useful now. After all, Li Fan still had to use the Zhang family to restrain her. Fu Yinji and Tanggua sat in the back of the car. He didn't say much but kept playing with his phone. When the matter was settled, the corners of his lips curled up subconsciously. Tanggua noticed and glanced at him. He quickly stopped smiling. It's better not to go out alone at this time. Even if it's someone you know, they might do something to you. He knew that his arrival might have prevented her from teaching Zhang Xing a lesson. Then, he would help her teach him a lesson. Anyway, it was fine as long as he didn't die, right? If she wasn't powerful, she would be the one at a disadvantage. He had found several women for Zhang Xing who could satisfy him. He should be able to have a good time tonight. He hoped that Zhang Xing would suddenly wake up and not bully girls like Tanggua in the future. Zhang Xing brought the drunk Tanggua to the hotel and booked a room. He thought that he would be able to do something wonderful immediately, but when he came out of the bathroom, he saw Tanggua awake at the door. At that time, he felt that something was wrong, but when he thought of Li Fan's specious words, he felt that his head was green. Since he was already here, he naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. How much strength could a little girl have? Being able to endure for so many days was already his limit. If she did not provoke Li Fan, he would still respect her. However, he underestimated Tanggua. When he was about to fight, Tanggua knocked him out with a punch. When Zhang Xing woke up, he felt that something was wrong. He kept feeling that something was touching his body. When he opened his eyes, he saw a few fat women around 40 or 50 years old sitting around him with excited smiles. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't. His mouth was sealed. Host, you don't have to regret that you didn't teach Zhang Xing a lesson. Your cutie has arranged a crazy banquet for him. The system blabbered. Tanggua, peaked that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.